The burgundy leather booth had witnessed 1,000 meals, 1,000 conversations, but none quite like this one. Thomas sat rigid in his navy suit, his hands clasped so tightly on the white tablecloth that his knuckles had gone pale. Across from him, his father Richard reached for the plate the server was offering, his movements casual, almost theatrical in their ease. "I'll take that one, sweetheart," Richard said, his voice carrying that familiar boom that had once made Thomas feel protected. Now it just made him feel small. The young woman serving them, Emma, her name tag read, held the plate steady despite the weight of the tension she'd walked into. She was maybe 23, working her way through college probably, and Thomas could see in her careful, neutral expression that she'd been trained to be invisible during family drama. He wondered how many scenes like this she'd witnessed in this upscale Manhattan restaurant. Thomas had chosen Lombardi's deliberately. It was public enough that his father couldn't make a scene, prestigious enough that Richard would feel obligated to come, and expensive enough that the gravity of what Thomas needed to say would be clear. This wasn't a casual conversation. This was an ending. "Dad," Thomas began, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not yet," Richard cut him off, accepting the plate from Emma with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Let's at least wait until after we order. Emma here doesn't need to hear whatever melodrama you've prepared for today." Emma's cheeks flushed slightly, and she hurried away, grateful for the escape. Thomas watched her go, envying her ability to simply walk away from this table, from this moment, from the man who had shaped and scarred him in equal measure. The restaurant hummed with the quiet conversations of the wealthy and powerful. Lombardi's had been a family tradition for 3 generations of Whitmore men. Thomas's grandfather had brought his father here. His father had brought him. It was where they celebrated victories, where business deals were sealed with handshakes over ribeye steaks, where the Whitmore legacy was discussed and debated and passed down like an heirloom. Today, Thomas was here to give it all back. "You look thin," Richard observed, finally looking at his son properly. "Are you eating? That apartment you insisted on getting in Brooklyn, do you even have a proper kitchen?" "Dad, I need to tell you something. I know what you need to tell me, Thomas." Richard's voice dropped, losing its jovial edge. "You think I don't know? You think I haven't seen it, coming for months?" Thomas felt his heart hammering against his ribs. He'd rehearsed this conversation 100 times in his therapist's office, in front of his bathroom mirror, during long walks across the Brooklyn Bridge when Manhattan glittered before him like a cage made of lights. "Then you know I can't do it anymore," Thomas said. "I can't be who you want me to be. I can't take over the firm. I can't marry Catherine. I can't pretend that my life belongs to you just because your life belonged to your father." Richard's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. To anyone else in the restaurant, he would have looked perfectly composed. But Thomas had spent 28 years learning to read the micro-expressions on his father's face, the subtle shifts that preceded storms. "You think you're the first Whitmore to have doubts?" Richard asked quietly. "You think I didn't have moments where I wanted to run, where I wondered what else I could have been? Then why didn't you?" The words came out more desperately than Thomas had intended. "Because I was a man, Thomas. Because I understood that what we want and what we need are often 2 different things. Because I knew that the freedom you think you're chasing is just another word for selfishness dressed up in therapy speak." Emma returned with bread and butter, placing the basket between them like a peace offering. She was careful not to make eye contact with either man. The oil paintings on the walls, hunting scenes, pastoral landscapes, seemed to lean in to listen. "Is that what you think this is?" Thomas asked after Emma had retreated again. "Selfishness? What else would you call it? You have every advantage a man could want. A position waiting for you at one of the most prestigious law firms in the city, a beautiful woman from a good family who loves you, a name that opens doors. And you want to throw it all away to do what? Write poetry? Paint? Find yourself?" Thomas flinched. His father had discovered his notebook 6 months ago, had read the poems Thomas had been working on since college. The violation still burned. "I want to be honest," Thomas said, "about who I am, about what I want from life. Honest." Richard spat the word like it tasted bitter. "Let me tell you about honesty, son. Honesty is a luxury. Honesty is what people claim they want until they're faced with the actual truth of things, that life requires compromise, that we all play roles, that sometimes love means sacrifice. Love shouldn't require sacrificing who you are. Grow up, Thomas. Everyone sacrifices who they are. That's what it means to be an adult. Your mother sacrificed her art career. I sacrificed. He stopped abruptly, his expression hardening further. It doesn't matter what I sacrificed. The point is, we do it. We do it because some things are bigger than our individual desires. Thomas thought about his mother, about the paintings she'd stopped making, about how she'd slowly disappeared into the role of Mrs. Richard Whitmore, until there was hardly anything left of the girl from Ohio who dreamed of showing in galleries. He'd found her old canvases in the attic last Christmas. Bold, wild, beautiful things that bore no resemblance to the careful, curated life she now led. I don't want to disappear, Thomas said softly. You're not disappearing. You're becoming. There's a difference. Becoming what? A copy of you? Another man in a suit sitting in restaurants like this, pretending everything is fine while dying inside? Richard's face finally cracked, anger breaking through. You ungrateful! He caught himself, glancing around the restaurant, remembering where they were. When he spoke again, his voice was controlled but cold as winter. Do you have any idea what I've built for you? The life I've secured? The future I've protected? I never asked for any of it. You didn't have to ask. That's what fathers do. We build, we plan, we ensure our children don't have to struggle the way we did. But I need to struggle, Dad. Don't you see? I need to fail on my own terms rather than succeed on yours. Emma appeared again, this time to take their orders. Richard ordered the ribeye, medium rare, exactly as he always did. Thomas ordered a salad he had no intention of eating. The ritual felt absurd, pretending they were here for a meal when what they were really doing was dismantling their relationship piece by piece. After Emma left, Richard reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small black box. He placed it on the table between them with the careful precision of a chess player making a decisive move. Your grandfather's cufflinks, Richard said. I was going to give them to you at the engagement party. They've been passed down for 4 generations. They're yours now. Wear them when you take Catherine to dinner this weekend. Wear them when you tell her you're ready to set a date. Thomas stared at the box like it was a coiled snake. Those cufflinks represented everything. The weight of expectation, the chain of inheritance, the unspoken demand that he become another link in an endless succession of Whitmore men doing what Whitmore men do. I broke up with Catherine 3 weeks ago, Thomas said. I told her the truth, about me, about what I want, about who I really am. The silence that followed was so complete that Thomas could hear his own heartbeat, could hear the clink of silverware at distant tables, could hear the muted jazz playing through invisible speakers. You told her, Richard finally said, his voice hollow. I told her everything. About Marcus, about the fact that I'm in love with him, about how I've been lying to everyone, including myself, for years because I was terrified of this exact moment. Richard's hand moved slowly across the table and closed the black box, withdrawing it as if Thomas had proven himself unworthy of its contents. His face had gone gray, older somehow, and for a moment Thomas felt a stab of guilt so sharp it nearly made him take it all back. I see, Richard said. And does your mother know about this revelation? She knows. She's known for years, actually. She was the one who encouraged me to tell you, to stop living a lie. Something flickered across Richard's face. Betrayal, maybe, or hurt that his wife had kept this secret. Of course she did. Of course she would encourage you to destroy everything we've built. I'm not destroying anything, Dad. I'm just choosing a different life than the one you planned for me. There's no difference, Thomas. To me, those are the same thing. Their food arrived, delivered by a different server this time. Emma had wisely passed them off to someone else. The ribeye sat in front of Richard, perfectly cooked, expensive, exactly what he'd ordered every time they'd come here for the past 28 years. Thomas's salad looked wilted and sad. Neither of them picked up their forks. So what now? Richard asked. What's your grand plan? You walk away from the firm, from your family, from everything you've ever known, and then what? You and this Marcus, he said the name like it hurt his teeth. You're going to do what exactly? Live, Thomas said simply. Just live. Figure it out as we go. Maybe I'll teach, maybe I'll write, Maybe I'll find something I'm actually passionate about instead of something I'm supposed to be passionate about. You sound like a child. Maybe. But I'd rather sound like a child and feel alive than sound like a man and feel dead inside. Richard picked up his knife and fork, cut into his steak with violent precision. Blood pooled on the white plate. He took a bite, chewed mechanically, swallowed. "This conversation is over," he said finally. "If you walk out of this restaurant, having made this decision, you're making a choice. Do you understand? You're choosing him, this life, over your family. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, Thomas. That's another thing you'll learn when you're living in whatever fantasy world you think you're entering. Life isn't fair, and families require loyalty, even when that loyalty requires lying, especially then, because sometimes lies are kinder than truths. Sometimes pretending is what holds everything together. You think your grandparents were happy. You think anyone's marriage is what it appears to be. We do what we have to do." Thomas felt tears burning behind his eyes but refused to let them fall. Not here, not in Lombardi's, where Whitmore men were supposed to be made of stronger stuff. "I love you, Dad," he said quietly, "but I can't be what you want me to be. I've tried. God knows I've tried, but it's killing me. Every day I pretend it takes a piece of me. Eventually there won't be anything left. There's already nothing left," Richard said, his voice flat. "The son I raised would never do this. Whoever you are now, whoever you've decided to become, I don't know him." The words landed like physical blows. Thomas had known they were coming. His therapist had warned him, had helped him prepare for rejection, but knowing and experiencing were different things. The pain was exquisite, perfect, absolute. "Maybe you never knew him," Thomas said, standing up. His legs felt unsteady, but he remained upright. "Maybe the son you raised was just another role I was playing, just like all the other roles in this family. Maybe it's time someone broke the cycle." He pulled out his wallet, placed $300 bills on the table, more than enough to cover both meals and leave Emma a generous tip for the trauma. Richard didn't look at the money, didn't look at Thomas. He simply sat there, a man in his 60s eating steak alone in a restaurant full of people, the black box with his father's cufflinks sitting beside, his plate like an accusation. "Goodbye, Dad," Thomas said. Richard didn't respond. He cut another piece of steak, brought it to his mouth, chewed with the mechanical precision of a man going through motions. Around them, Lombardi's continued its evening service, indifferent to the small tragedy unfolding in the corner booth. Thomas walked toward the exit, past the oil paintings and the other diners, past Emma, who gave him a quick, sympathetic glance, past the maitre d' who'd known him since he was a boy. The October air hit him as he stepped onto the Manhattan sidewalk, cool, clean, full of possibility. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. How did it go? Thomas stood there on the sidewalk, people flowing around him, the lights of the city beginning to glow in the gathering dusk. Inside Lombardi's, his father sat alone, perhaps already planning how to explain Thomas's absence to the partners at the firm, to the family, to everyone who'd been expecting one story and would now have to reconcile themselves to another. Thomas typed his response. "I'll tell you everything when I get home." Home, not the apartment in Tribeca where he'd grown up, not his grandfather's house in Connecticut, not any of the places that carried the Whitmore name. Home was a small walk-up in Brooklyn with Marcus, with books stacked everywhere and terrible water pressure and neighbors who played salsa music too loud on weekends. Home was whatever he and Marcus would build together, brick by uncertain brick. As Thomas walked toward the subway, he felt the weight he'd been carrying begin to lift. The guilt remained. It would probably always remain. But beneath it was something else, relief, freedom, the terrifying, exhilarating sensation of standing at the edge of his own life, finally ready to jump. Behind him, in Lombardi's warm, familiar interior, Richard Whitmore continued his meal alone. The empty seat across from him seemed to grow larger with each passing moment. A void where a son had been, where a future had been planned, where 4 generations of tradition had come to meet the immovable object of one man's truth. The server who'd replaced Emma approached cautiously. "Can I get you anything else, sir?" Richard looked at Thomas's untouched salad, at the money on the table, at the black box containing cufflinks that would now have no one to pass them to. "No," he said quietly. "There's nothing else. And in that moment, both men, father and son, separated now by choice and by truth, were finally, devastatingly honest.